Hello there! Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Vana Constantinidis. I am Daddy Venus on TikTok with a 3 where the E is supposed to be. This is finally me using my YouTube channel. I've been a little scared too, not gonna lie. Beating my fears, I'm tired of being scared. Here is the full story of my eating disorder throughout the years and how I have tried to combat that and reteach myself to have a healthier relationship with food. Before we even really get into everything, I just want to put a trigger warning about eating disorders. There's gonna be some talk of anxiety as well. So I just want to put it out there before anybody watches this video, just so that you know what you're getting into. I can directly correlate my young dieting to where I am now with my eating disorder. The first things I were taught were good and bad foods. I never had like a normal foundation. It's not even in quotes, like it's true. I never had a normal foundation for learning how to eat properly and not make food a mortal enemy. I think the best way to do this is to just kind of get into it. So that's what I'm gonna do. My first dieting experience was at the ripe age of 7. I remember it was the summertime and I was going to a brand new camp. One of my first days, I was on this new diet, right? Because I was perceived as a bigger kid. Quite honestly, even looking back at pictures of myself, I really wasn't that big of a kid. And even if I was, I don't think that forcing me from a diet straight out the gate of me learning how to form relationships with different things such as food, that definitely didn't serve me in any way, and it definitely didn't make me skinnier or healthier. All it did was give me severe emotional damage. It was this diet called the red light, green light diet. Even thinking about it now, I just kind of sit there and I'm like, ugh, I hate that I had to do that. This was one of like my most embarrassing childhood moments. This program came with a book. In the book, it would have different sections throughout it where you can look at the green foods, which were essentially healthy foods. I don't know where this came from. Basically foods that had little to no calorie value, right? Next were yellow foods, which are like somewhere in between. I can't really remember the specifics of the yellow foods, but there were very few options in all of these categories. And then red foods, literally anything and everything on the planet. If you're a kid and you enjoy that, I'd bet it's a red food. The book wasn't like maybe this big, like the normal size of like a regular book. The book was like this big. I would have kids gathered around me while I ate my lunch with the book, and I was literally explaining to them my diet at 7. Where do we find it acceptable to make that child, who doesn't really want to be a part of what they're doing, by the way, perform a certain way in front of their classmates or peers? That was so embarrassing for me. I felt like such a little freak. I was like, why am I the only person who has to bring a book to lunch? Why am I the only person who has to worry about what I eat for lunch? Like, I don't understand. Eventually, as time went on, I got really tired of the book. I started cheating on the diet. I did lose some weight on it. I remember very vaguely being taken to get new clothes. And I remember being told, I'm so proud of you, you know, you did so good, yada, yada, yada. I don't even remember how much I lost at that time because it's so like hazy thinking back on it. What I do remember is feeling like a failure when I would want to be a normal kid and like not be on a diet 24/7 because children aren't supposed to be on diets. From the ages of about, I would say 7 to 12, whenever I would go to friends' houses, simply because my food was extremely monitored at home, I had to ask before I ate anything. I'd already had like a huge complex about eating. Do I have to ask if I can eat this? And so whenever I go to friends' houses, I would go crazy. Like I would go crazy. Like I always felt bad about it. But at the same time, it was like I was kind of like fighting. I was like, I need to, you know, be a kid at some point. Like I don't want to eat half the things that I'm eating at home. Like I I want to sustain and make myself happy too, you know? I didn't have that thought process at the time, but looking back at it, you know, that was the main motivation for eating out, like at my friends' houses. It was just accessible. It was easy. It would just stay between me and my friends. And to me, that felt very safe. I'd felt this really large burden. My desires, just because I weighed more than everybody else, were automatically not valued as highly, or kind of dismissed as just, oh, she just wants to eat. No, maybe I just like the food. For a long time, I thought I was crazy for feeling that way. As I grew up, which we'll talk about later, reteach myself things, my perspectives on almost everything I had learned have done a 180. Even at home, as a result, when nobody was looking, I would just like, zoop, take in my mouth, like it never happened, right? Nobody saw it, it didn't happen. If nobody saw me eat it, I didn't have it, right? That was my mindset, because if I convinced myself I didn't eat it, how was anybody else gonna know I didn't eat it? Like, that was my strategy. Like, I had to act and like make sure that no one knew how much I was actually eating, because I was so ashamed and embarrassed. I felt like I was doing something wrong. You should just control yourself, like grow up, you know? And that's just not, that just wasn't my reality. Like, I wasn't educated about eating disorders. My food patterns were some of my first taught behaviors, so they stuck with me for the longest, and honestly, they've been some of the most difficult to kind of squash and replace with healthier ideas. You're gonna kind of see how that changes over the years. And honestly, most of the time when I'd leave, I'd be so ashamed and embarrassed. I wonder what my friend is thinking of me. Like, does he or she think that like all I do is eat? And for a long time, I had a lot of people pleasing and like worrying about other people and their perception of me for honestly way too long. And it was a learned behavior, you know? Like, I didn't know to start nipping it until I got older, and I realized. This is almost like a core memory for me, this next part of the story. I saw this video when I was 9, and before I talk about the video, I do want to let you know that I will be including a trigger warning here about eating disorder. This is something that has stuck with me, and that's why I feel it's super essential to share. That is something that you are sensitive of. I would skip the next few minutes. Just want to put it out there. I don't want anybody to feel uncomfortable. So yeah, just a little warning before I get into the next part. So when I was 9, I was watching videos on YouTube, and I stumbled upon this video. I would say maybe it was like a 10-minute clip of this girl who was about my age, and she had anorexia. And so I watched the whole thing, and the part that I specifically and distinctively remember from that video is Haagen-Dazs ice cream was her favorite. And I also love Haagen-Dazs ice cream. I still do to this day. So I remember hearing that. And she was like, one day I really loved Haagen-Dazs, and the next I just didn't want it. We kind of were taken throughout her whole journey, which I'm not going to get it too into because it was really graphic. And I don't want to, number one, upset anybody. And number two, it's still a scary feeling for me to talk about. Not because of people with anorexia, the headspace I was in at that age, number one, and number two, the thing that I took from that video most was that people who looked like me and bigger people were not displayed as having eating disorders. Seeing that video really made me nervous. I didn't know how to move forward from that. It was in the back of my mind for a long time. It's been in my brain for about 11 years now, which is kind of crazy to say. But that was kind of where I had my first exposure with eating disorders. And from that moment, I took that heavier people, at least from what I knew and what I could see, and it was also never brought up as even an option or a discussion around me. I never considered an eating disorder was a real thing for somebody who looked like me. As a result of this thinking, I never told anyone how much I was eating. Nobody knew. The only people who had any sort of inkling about it were the people that I would hang out with. They would just see me eat a lot at their houses, but they didn't have the other pieces of the puzzle. I think that my biggest fear was being shamed or being invalidated. I was scared that if I even, you know, told anybody what was really going on with me, number one, I didn't think that anybody would be open to finding another alternative as just I want to eat. And that's it. you know? I knew that there was more. Like, there would be times where I physically couldn't stop myself because I was feeling X, Y, or Z, you know? Like, a lot of it was tied to emotions because of the way that I was taught about food. I was also a very, very anxious child. And like I said, I didn't really tell anybody about that either. I started therapy for my anxiety when I was in 3rd grade. So you can imagine that's been a long-standing thing by now. Generally, I was a pretty confident kid. I was also told from a super young age that nobody would love me for the right reasons if I stayed the way I was. I wouldn't find somebody with good intentions for me just because of the way that my body looked. It didn't matter who I was. It didn't matter the content of my heart. It mattered the content of my body and the way that I physically appeared. I was also told all the time, friends, parents, my friends, family, and I'm not gonna lie, this comment destroyed me as a kid. People would literally look me in the eye and be like, you know, you'd be one of the prettiest girls in your class if you just lost some weight, you know? And I would kind of sit there and be like, what is this? And like this, I'm holding my stomach, you can't really see. What does all this have to do with who I am and if I'm lovable or not? You know, I have to say, one thing I will give myself credit for is I did know that from a young age. You know, even in my head, it just didn't really sit right that that would be a reason somebody wouldn't like me or somebody wouldn't love me. Romantically, I mean, like, the right person for me. I don't just mean, like, any random person off the street. Because I was always told those things. Unfortunately, I wish I could say that my confidence when I was younger came from a true, genuine place. It did, but it didn't. It didn't come from a happy, loving place and, like, wanting to put myself first. It came from a place of just not wanting to let people think that their words had power over me, or just because they said that about me, that didn't mean it was true. I was very, very determined about this. And it wasn't like a conscious thing. It was definitely in my subconscious because I didn't really realize this until I got older. But when I was young, I wanted to show everybody, you know, doesn't matter what you think about me, as long as I love me, at least somebody does. You know, like, I was choosing to project that to other people, even if it wasn't always what I authentically felt. I also had horrendous patterns of people pleasing. It's not even funny how many times I'd catch myself just trying to make people stay because of this root that I had. You know, I had always felt, even if I didn't want to believe it, somewhere in me, that child in me believed it. And so I would fight extra hard to get people to stay, you know, like, I would give more, you know, because I felt that as a plus size person, and by the way, this isn't true, this is just what I felt. Just because you feel something does not mean it's real. I'm going to put my finger at you for that because I want that to be clear through this. But just because you feel something does not mean it's real. So I did not want to let myself ever feel that I wasn't worthy of love. So I didn't let anybody know that I was insecure unless they were, like, people I trusted. I was very, very careful with my image after that. So we're gonna kind of age up a little bit. So this is kind of like the next age group of my experiences. So I would say from about 13 to 16, this is when I was given some more independence. I didn't really have to ask about what I ate anymore because, you know, I was getting older. That would be kind of silly at that point when I'm a whole teenager asking, can I have this? Can I have this? You know, like, I think everybody could agree on that. So we kind of dropped that. After school, high school specifically, through that time period, I would come home and whatever I could find, whether that be expired food, making combinations of things that don't even go together, anything. And when I say anything, I mean anything I could get my hands on. If I could make something or, like, come up with a recipe, and I'd sit there for about 2 to 3 hours at a time, almost every single weekday, and I'd just eat because nobody was there. Nobody was telling me what to do. You know, it was my way of honoring myself. It was my way of kind of putting my foot down and not letting anybody tell me what to do. And of course, still throughout all of this, nobody had any idea what was going on. I was always deeply ashamed of these behaviors of mine. I did not know at the time that binging was a thing, and I didn't know that it could be applied to me. When I was 16, I went to a doctor and she told me that I had PCOS. And if you do not know what PCOS is, I'm going to teach you. PCOS, otherwise known as polycystic ovarian syndrome, is a hormonal disorder where your hormones are not at the levels that they should be. Different side effects that can come from that are an irregularity of menstrual cycle, depression, facial hair, excess hair, acne, oily skin, all of which I had. The biggest symptom of all, at least for me, this was my experience. Everybody's experience is different with PCOS, but in my experience, the most issues I've had are with the weight. With PCOS, it is extremely easy to put on weight. It is 30 times harder to lose it with PCOS because of the hormone imbalance. I can't explain that because I don't know how. We're not gonna pretend I do. I'm really bad at science. So if you want to do more independent research on that, please be my guest. More common than you think. Finding out that I had PCOS was kind of like a relief for me. It kind of made me feel that it was less of my doing, and it was also my body that wasn't really working well with me. So now we're going to move into the next year of my life, which is from 17 to 18. This is a fun chapter. Sarcasm. Next phase, and this is when the nighttime eating would happen. I always loved staying up late, but when I got older and I had food in my room, I would go crazy as soon as everybody was asleep. But at the time, I didn't have any stomach problems, so I would be able to eat everything. Like, I could have sour food, spicy food, and I loved both of them, by the way. Literally anything you gave me, I could eat, and I wouldn't have like a reaction to it poorly with my stomach. This is when I would sit there for maybe like an hour or two at night. I'd watch TV and I'd eat. It was my business and my business only. It was my time to be alone where nobody could see or make me feel judged. I'm gonna tell you guys a little story about my senior year. So I was 18 at the time, and I don't know how many of you know this, but I am a COVID graduate. I was a senior in 2020. So as you can imagine, we didn't get much. But what we did have was a drive-through at our school to pick up our materials, like yearbook, graduation, cap, gown. And the night before, I had like a big cup of almonds, cashews, what else was in there? I would say macadamia nuts. Like, it was just like a little assortment, right? And usually when I have nuts, I only have like maybe like this much, but like this night I decided to have like a whole like solo cup full. I was eating the nuts, whatever. The next morning I wake up, and when I tell you my life, I've never experienced pain like that. I was crying, screaming, like it was brutal. It sucked. I couldn't make it go away no matter what I did. Like, even talking about it, my stomach is like cramping up right now because it was such a traumatic experience for my body. Unfortunately, after that incident, I was left with an extreme fear of eating after that. That experience scared me so much. I was probably on this side of the eating disorder spectrum, and I ran all the way to this side. For the next 3 months, putting anything in my mouth was the biggest struggle of my life. Every time I went to eat something, I'd feel like I was going to be sick. I thought that I couldn't hold it down. I thought I was going to throw up. I didn't think my stomach could handle anything. The most I would eat once a day throughout those 3 months is probably like maybe half a meal. And I'd try to eat little things throughout the day. Most of the time, like, I would literally feel my body going to like, ooh, you know, bring it up. It was horrible. It was really horrible. That was the first time I ever experienced any sort of starvation in my life. Every time that I was put on a diet, which was on and off throughout my life, every time I was put on a diet, I did not want to do it. Inside of me, I didn't want to change myself. As I grew older, I never hated the way I looked. I never hated myself. I never hated my appearance. Like, there was always at least one part of me that loved me. Even thinking back on it, I can't recall a single time in my life where it's been like complete hatred for myself with not even an ounce of love. Like, that has not been my experience at all. And I'm very thankful for that. Honestly, love being a curvier person. I think it's fun. I enjoy it. I love looking at myself in the mirror. I think that I just enjoy my body type. You know, I love all body types, but I love my body type on me, you know? But the thing I was missing was health. After I got out of the starvation period, I realized it was a psychological thing, and I was able to kind of nip it and get rid of it. But then after that, I moved back to the side of the spectrum and I started binging like never before. Day in, day out, all the time, every day. It just didn't stop, right? We're gonna fast forward to my 19th birthday. I was turning 19 and I went on vacation with 2 of my friends. We went to this hotel that my family and I have been going to since I was maybe 14. Sorry, I had so much trouble trying to walk across the hotel. And my favorite thing to do at the hotel was walk throughout the hotel. That was my favorite thing to do. And on my birthday, I couldn't do it. And my 19th birthday was one of the best and worst days of my life. And I will always say that. I was miserable the whole day. I was crying. I was devastated. I didn't realize how much my unhealthiness and taking my ability away to walk really opened my eyes. It really showed me that I needed to take care of myself. And it wasn't because I was doing it because I didn't love myself. And that's what I struggled with for a very long time. I also didn't want to lose weight because I was being told to lose weight. I had always said, if I want to lose weight someday, I will do it for myself, and I will do it because I want to do it, not because somebody else is telling me to do it. But after my 19th birthday, I sat down with my mom and I talked to her about everything, and I told her, I was like, you know what? I think it's time. I think I've hit the realization that everybody always talks about, where like that golden moment where everything just kind of clicks and like, you're like, okay, I'm ready to do it. Like, I'm ready to change my life. I'd been trying to force that moment for years. And you can't force something like that. That is an organic, real moment, and that is never something you'll be able to force. You can't force somebody to want to lose weight. You cannot force somebody to change because you want them to change. They have to do that themselves, and that's in all regards. That's about personality, making changes in behavior, all of it. If somebody wants to, they will. So I would say that this is genuinely the only point in my life where I have consciously tried to mend my relationship with food, and it worked. It didn't work permanently because this has been something that has been programmed and enabled in me since I was a young kid. This is not something that's going to change in a year. This is something that's going to take a long time, and I have to be patient. And one of my biggest things is I'm not a patient person. So it's been hard for me to kind of stay patient with myself, but that is also the key. You can't expect to change your life in 30 days or overnight. If you want to change your life, you have to change your life. Like, there's no easy way to do it. Like a diet, and this is probably controversial, but I'm going to say it anyway. Diets are horrible. Diets will get you where you want to be in like 2 months. I would say a good portion of the time, it's either going to result in being extremely unhappy. It's not a sustainable lifestyle because you can't cut out whole food groups for a long time. That's just not sustainable, and that's not healthy, including carbs. Carbs are 100% included in that. You need carbs. I don't care what anybody says. You need carbs. You need all the food groups. That's why they're there. You need them. The biggest thing that helped me with my eating disorder, and what I realized was one of the roots, was restriction. It's not going to help you in the long run. It's not going to give you the happiness that you want. And quite frankly, like, it's going to encourage eating disordered patterns. Because as soon as you break that diet, everything I say is speaking from my experience. Everything I say is from my own eyes and my own lens in life. As soon as I broke any type of diet, the first thing I did was go crazy with binging because I wasn't allowed to eat for a certain period of time. Just let myself fall into eating whatever I wanted because I had been restricting myself for so long. I didn't feel free in my food choices. I felt like I was like being locked up and like I was being guided on a certain way. And that's no way to eat. Like, you have to eat to live. Like, You can't, it drives me crazy. I started losing weight April 1st, 2021, and throughout the past year, I think that the date today is May 7th. For over the past year and a month, I have stopped weighing myself. I did in the first 6 months of my journey, but I realized that as I weighed myself, and even as I weighed myself as a kid, I never really realized how impactful it was in my everyday activities. If I saw a certain number on the scale, that would define my whole day and my mood for the day. And honestly, that's not healthy. You shouldn't let a number dictate the way that you live your life. It's not healthy, and it really makes me sad that we're all taught to worry about the specific number. In my opinion, I think that the quality of health and quality of life is far more important than any number that a scale machine can tell. Now I'm gonna insert some pictures from my weight loss, so you can enjoy those. They're right over here. Some of the biggest lessons I had to teach myself was definitely unlearning good and bad foods. I had to take the labels off of them because otherwise I would have immense guilt whenever I'd be eating a bad food. If you are balanced and you keep things in moderation, that's a key. Keeping things in moderation is something that's going to help you tremendously. Instead of restricting, it's about balance. It's not restriction, it's balance. Like, that's the key. It's not about taking away. It's taking in mind. Be aware of what you're eating, you know, not in good or bad. It's more about how it makes you feel. And that's how I started relying and teaching myself how to eat, is based on how I feel. And I listen to my body. I don't listen to my head. I listen to what my body is telling me. If I'm full, I will stop eating. If I'm still hungry, I will eat. It's simple as that. I honor myself and I honor my desires. Say I felt like having fruit on Thursday, but on Friday I wanted chocolate instead. You know what? That just makes me craving fruit on Thursday and craving chocolate on Friday. It's that simple. I think people overcomplicate it to such an extent. It just kind of makes you sit back and be like, what are we doing here? Why are we teaching young people this? Why is this the default that we know? One of the biggest things I had to teach myself was how to be patient and nice to myself. This type of journey, whether you're beating an eating disorder, you want to lose weight in a happy and healthy way, you're going to have that kindness and understanding with yourself. If you have a birthday dinner to go to, do not go to that restaurant and scarf down a salad just because you feel like you have to. Because I guarantee you, at least for me, whenever I've done that, I've been nothing but miserable, and all I can focus on is all the good food that everybody else is eating and how I have to sit there and eat a salad like a schlep. Like, that was my thought process. You cannot expect lifelong changes to be made in a week. You cannot get mad at yourself when you make a mistake, because guess what? We're human. We're people. It's normal to make mistakes, and I don't really see them as mistakes. I just call it that because that's what everybody kind of refers to messing up their diets. But you also have to remember that you're a person. Like, you're not going to be on one mode at all times. We're going to be real about this. You're not always going to want to be on a diet. You're not. It's not going to make you happy all the time. The results may make you happy, but are you actually enjoying what you're eating? Are you actually enjoying and feel satisfied with what's happening? Another thing that was super essential to my healing was letting go of things, ideas, and people that did not serve me or bring me the positivity and love that I needed to really commit to myself and do something to help myself. I have had to cut off so many people, so many different ideas, unlearn so many behaviors, and they've all been difficult, but it's also been for my benefit. I would not change anything about my journey. And yes, I've been through a lot of difficult things regarding food especially, but I wouldn't change anything because I would never be where I am now in this exact moment without all of those experiences. My biggest concern used to be everybody else. How does X, Y, and Z affect me? And guess what? Maybe it does, but what really matters at the end of the day? Most of my thoughts were centered on other people and not on myself. And that was just such a detriment to me. I was not honoring my needs and desires the way that they deserved to be honored. That was not like an implementation in me. That was like a natural instinct to make sure that I'm taken care of before I try to worry about anybody else. I had to learn that honoring my needs and desires was not an evil feeling, and it wasn't an evil thing just because I was bigger. If I wanted a piece of candy, I was entitled to that just as much as a child who weighed 90 pounds less than I did. 90 was probably too big of an exaggeration, but I think you get what I was trying to say with that. The biggest thing that has helped me is getting to know myself, knowing what I need, knowing the methods that work for me, and knowing how and when I need to recenter and come back to self. One of the biggest things I learned was learning that nobody else can tell you who you are but yourself. Nobody will know you the way that you know you if you take the time to get to know yourself. And when I tell you, I loved myself before, but now I'm just so in love with myself in all ways. I love my heart. I love who I am. I'm gonna brag a little bit. I think I'm beautiful. And I think everybody, and I mean everybody, deserves to feel that way about themselves, because guess what? Everybody is beautiful inside and out in their own special, unique ways. And that deserves to be honored. Everybody on this planet is entitled, as long as they're not hurting anybody. That there are some limitations to this, but you get the general gist. Everybody in this world, as long as you're not hurting other people, is entitled to what will make them happy and what they enjoy. They also deserve a strong sense of self and relationship to themselves, because that is important. It's important with boundaries. It's important with anything and everything in your life. It's almost like a joke when anybody else tries to tell you about yourself, when you know yourself inside and out, and the things that trigger you, why you react certain ways, like what brings up certain triggers. Like once you understand all those things about yourself and you really stop being scared to take that deep dive into your psyche, into your head, into your heart, your feelings, and you just let everything flow together and you don't suppress, it changes everything, you know? Like at that point, people can look at you and call you X, Y, and Z, and you just, funny. Because guess what? Nobody knows you the way you know you, especially when you make the effort to deep dive into yourself. It does not matter what anybody else has to say about you. As long as you're happy with yourself, that is what is the main focus. Recovery is a really hard thing to do. I would not consider myself recovered, but I am on the path. I am on the path to healing, the path to recovery. Guess what? Healing isn't linear. Journeys aren't linear. And if you don't know what linear means going in one way, right? So that doesn't mean you're going to be up all the time. You're going to have periods where you're really, really high and then you come really, really low. It's all about not letting yourself get stuck in the low. You can feel the low and you can understand it, but it's about picking yourself up when you're in that low and doing what you need to do for yourself. And no matter what that is, you have to make sure that you are honoring yourself first before anybody else, especially when it comes to your mental health and your body. Do not change for anybody else. Do not change who you are for anybody else other than yourself. You also have to be flexible with yourself. Not every day is going to be perfect. Not every day is going to go as you plan. Things will happen. Life happens. You can't plan everything. And when things go wrong, you have to adapt. You're absolutely entitled to your emotions and you can feel however you want. Don't let it get you stuck. You have to remember, if you want to make lifelong changes, with that being anything in your life, if there's something that is existing for you that you want to actively change, you have to make steps to that goal. But that doesn't mean you have to take leaps and jumps to that goal. You can, if that's what works for you, by all means, do what you got to do. But in my experience, especially when trying to change like behaviors and habits you've learned for your whole life, the best approach to take is slow and steady. Slow and steady wins the race. You have to be patient, especially like I keep saying, if you want a lifelong change, you have to make lifelong changes. For example, when I was losing weight and I formed a healthier relationship with food, I wouldn't stop eating the things that I loved. What I would do is I would substitute, for example, maybe things to make it with, or like the basic ingredients for maybe like fat-free, reduce sugar, reduce fat. I would try to substitute wherever I could without feeling unsatisfied. If I wanted a chocolate chip cookie, I would have a gluten-free cookie. It was awesome because I wouldn't feel like I was restricting myself, and I would make sure that if I'm eating that cookie, I like it. You know, I'm not just eating it because it's gluten-free. It's a cookie that I actually enjoy. So to kind of bring you guys up to speed of where I am now, I would not consider myself anywhere near fully healed. I definitely do still have eating disordered patterns. It's not the easiest for me. I've moved away from binging since I have lost weight. I have not hopped back on there. What I have been transitioning to is having periods of eating a lot less. And there will be some days where I get back into the headspace I was when I was around 18, and sometimes food is just super unappealing. I'd prefer not to eat rather than eat something. And that also does have a lot to do with my stomach problems, which are kind of their own set of issues. So I'm not going to get too much into that unless anybody wants to know. But I do have to say I am immensely proud of myself for how far I've come. I never thought in a million years that I would ever understand where I started and really understand it. Not just think I get it, but really fully get it and be able to analyze it now. I never thought that I would make this much progress and I would be this in love with myself in all aspects. I am in a much healthier place than I am now. I was pre-diabetic for a good portion of my life, and I no longer am. I do not have high blood pressure anymore. My sugar levels have gone down dramatically. My sodium levels have gone down dramatically. My blood work is amazing compared to what it's been. So that is one of my favorite accomplishments. I have also sized down. I am super happy with how I feel. It's not even just how I look. Obviously, like, you know, but it's more about my health, and I made it a center of my health. If you are struggling with an eating disorder, if there are resources around you, I would highly recommend taking advantage of those. I would recommend eating disorder treatment if that is at all possible for you. But if it is not, and your options aren't as wide open, these are tips that have really helped me. And I hope that by sharing anything at all today, my experiences and my transparency are able to help somebody know themselves and feel better about their own relationship to themselves. You deserve to honor your desires. You deserve to feel whole. You deserve to feel complete. And whatever that is for you, go after it. Don't let anybody hold you back. The only person that's holding you back at the end of the day is yourself. It's how much you allow other people's opinions to influence you. It's how much you allow what anybody says about you to hold weight. You know yourself, and you will know yourself better than anybody, and that's if you take the time to do it. My actual last piece of advice that I want to leave you guys with today is never let anybody tell you who you are. Always honor yourself, and never let anybody tell you who you are. You're awesome. You are worthy. Do not let anybody ever convince you of anything less. Ever. I will know, and I will come after you. Thank you guys so much for listening to me. I truly appreciate it. This is my first like YouTube video talking in years, so this was a little scary to film, but I'm really glad I did. I did mostly everything in one take, so this is like a super raw take, I guess. So I hope you enjoyed. For more, subscribe. I'm gonna link all my socials down below. My TikTok is at Daddy Venus with a 3, where the E is supposed to be in Venus, obviously because there's no E in Daddy. But yeah, guys, I really hope you enjoyed this video. I will be back with more. So thank you. Good night.